is all right. This is Soapbox After Dark. I am your host, Jamarl Thomas. The gentleman behind me that's looking kind of what the hell is going on is one Mr. Bernie Sanders. One Mr. Bernie Sanders is looking like that because I found a picture with him looking like that. To try to get across this notion of whatever that feeling is that he's projecting in his face. Ultimately, I want to have a conversation about superdelegates. And this story that came out, I think it was a day or so ago, gives the opportunity to have that story. As you know, superdelegates were stripped of their powers for the first round in the delegate count. Now, at the time that this was taken, people were saying that this was a momentous achievement. And I didn't necessarily deny that this was better, but momentous seemed a bit strong. Everybody that was touting this, that was glad-handing, had something, had a dog in the hunt. Lefties wanted to show that they had some level of clout within the context of the Democratic Party and that they could pull concessions. And so they grabbed this stick and they ran around with it like it was made of gold. The Democratic Party bellyached as if they lost something profound and precious. That's what took place. I, in the face of all this glad-handing, was the cynic in this and said, wait a minute, with all of these maniacs that's going to be in the race thinking Donald Trump is a lame duck, this may go to the second round. And if this goes to the second round, not only did you not get them to rig it 60% less, they're all still in the contest. Meaning each and every one of those superdelegates will be in full force if Sanders doesn't clinch the number of delegates he needs, 51%. This is, yes, better, but this doesn't really solve your issues. It seems that Sanders has gotten the memo and is out there glad-handing superdelegates in a potential eventuality of a contested convention. Yeah, I was the one that foresaw this eventuality nearly a year ago because it was kind of obvious. It was kind of obvious. Now, people in the article are making this point that, look, we don't expect this to take place. It depends on who you talk to, right? But we don't necessarily expect this to take place. It would be such an odd thing for people to have these delegates going into the contest. Why so optimistic, I would say, especially if we're talking about this thing coming from the left. To which the person may turn around and say, why so cynical? What do you mean, why so cynical? Why so cynical indeed? I have indelible scars with me from what took place in 2016. They are solid and painful as they are invisible. You cheated my guy. I mean, at the end of the day, you cheated my guy. And not just cheated my guy. As you were cheating my guy, you were looking me in the face at every opportunity you could, breathlessly telling me that this contest is fair, it's impartial, and that anybody attesting to the such is a sore loser. How dare you say that we're cheating this contest? To which I whispered, you are cheating in this contest. While you were cheating me, you continuously lied to me. And not just lied to me, that's never been dealt with. At the end of that contest, when people kind of made this point that you were rigging it, when Donna Brazile, to whatever degree you want to make this case, you were not impartial. You were rigged or pushed in favor of one of the other candidates. And you never dealt with that. You never dealt with that. And not just never dealt with that, even afterwards, could not own up to the fact that you guys were biased towards one of the candidates in the race to an extreme extent. She had control of the primary apparatus, at least from the standpoint of the DNC. So why wouldn't I be somewhat cynical in this process? We move up to 2020 in this race. Bernie Sanders is glad-handed these superdelegates, but there's also something that I know. There's no reason to believe that all of the candidates, that these corporate types the status quo, that they are working as individual parameters. And I'm saying this from the standpoint of, we know that Sanders, or there was an anti-Sanders meeting, or there were anti-Sanders meeting held across the United States with essentially the established party, both wings, mind you, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the House, leader of the Senate, and Buttigieg, the guy who nobody would know at the end of this contest, meeting up. You have an established wing of the party lined up against Sanders in this sense. This is kind of what the point I'm making here. There's no reason to believe that the people that are in this contest are functioning purely as individual entities. And however rare or off the reservation they think it is to think of a contested convention, I would say that you should think of that potentially, especially from the standpoint of somebody, if the person who you were pushing for is Sanders, especially attesting to the fact that you have both wings of the party in this case, meaning the House and the Senate, functioning with this notion of how do we stop Bernie Sanders? You have an established party trying to figure out how to stop Sanders without making it look like they're putting their finger on the dial. Don't take my word for it. Blame the New York Times. They covered the story. So I would say, not so much why so cynical, why so optimistic? And if you're not cynical, you should be. Again, especially if you're talking about this from the perspective of the left. At the very least, Sanders is aware of this. The question becomes, the question is this: is Sanders able to pull in the superdelegates? Are these guys creatures of the party itself? And if these guys are creatures of the party, then Sanders needs to win this outright so these guys never become a factor in the race. That's what this boils down to. Sanders needs to get enough delegates to where these guys don't become a factor. If Sanders doesn't get 51% of the delegates, it will go to the second round, at which point these superdelegates come into the race and they get a far, far more of a say-so in this. This is not an outcome that you want. So I don't know. In the article, it says that they're trying to contact the superdelegates early, meaning they're trying to make this case that part of the reason that Clinton was able to get so many of these delegates was because she had them sewed up early on, not so much because of who she was, but more so because of the operation that she had, meaning it was kind of assumed that it was her turn. And in doing so, that the contacts that these guys were making, they just kind of associated with Clinton. This doesn't necessarily bring up the money laundering that was taking place throughout the states where all of this money was going through, and this belief that Clinton was going to give money back to the party, to the state parties. She did not. She did not. I got to be honest, I don't fully know if that's true. Because of the fact that these two wings, and when I say two wings, I just mean House and Representative, and maybe I shouldn't say two wings at all. This established order of the party itself was meeting against Sanders. How many of these superdelegates are part of this established order? That's the part that gets interesting. And that's the part where there's a question about. And so, who knows? Sanders may play this superdelegates game extraordinarily well. I would say this, though. Do you really want to find out? Well, and last thing, and this is somewhat of a warning. If Sanders gets, let's say 45, 46% of the superdelegate votes. I mean, and this is me making another prediction. My other prediction just came true. If Sanders gets 45, 46% of the superdelegate vote, and he goes to the second round, a contested convention, that in and of itself, meaning contested conventions are rare, extremely rare. If it goes to the second round, and superdelegates choose the other candidate, there will be hell to pay. And by hell to pay, I mean you will lose to Donald Trump. You can mark it in stone. You can mark it in stone. That candidate, whoever that candidate is, I don't care who that candidate is, that candidate will lose. That candidate will lose. That candidate will absolutely fail. If Sanders goes out stumping for that candidate, Sanders will get booed. You have been given fair warning. I bid you fair warning. I'll end this here. If you guys enjoy the content and you find yourself coming back here often, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.